I'm joined once again. I think this is the third or fourth time now by Mick Hughes of the Quo tribute band Quo Connection. Thank you so much, Mick, once again for joining us today. We're talking about the On the Level album, which was released 50 years ago in 1975, and it hit a peak position in the UK charts of #1. It also has a distinction of containing the band's only credited #1 single, Down Down, which I'm sure we shall get into. But first, Mick, give us your kind of overall opinions on the album.
Overall opinions?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got it when it came out. So we'd had the Quo album, which was a great impression on me, because that was kind of like my starting point with getting serious about becoming a Quo listener, and that was my discovery of music. So it was with great anticipation that On the Level was coming out, and of course, as you say, Quo had already released Down Down, which was a #1 single. I mean, you couldn't have a better preparation or setup, set the table out for your forthcoming album than having a #1 hit from the forthcoming album. And so there was a lot of anticipation. This album's got a lot to live up to, and it didn't disappoint, I have to say. As I said, where Quo had such an impression on me, I was expecting a lot. And there's something about On the Level, and you often find people will always refer to it as it's their best album. And arguably, it is their best album in terms of composition, sound, everything, concept. It just has it all. And it's definitely top 5 of all-time Status Quo albums.
Because the production is quite different to the previous one. Quo was very heavy, probably their heaviest one that they ever recorded. On the Level has a more kind of measured production. The guitar sound is a little cleaner, but still within the confines of what they've set up.
Well, interestingly, I'm glad you've brought up about the guitar sound.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is integral, because up to this point, to mid-1974, Rick Parfitt's favoured guitar was a Gibson SG Junior, and that was stolen. That's another story. Anyway, he chanced upon this white Telecaster when they were playing at the Glasgow Apollo on the Quo tour in 1974. And that was it. That was his main guitar from that point. So you could say that On the Level was the first sort of Telecaster, dual Telecaster album on Vertigo, certainly. I mean, earlier, certainly on Mark Kelly's and Dog Two Head, Rick was playing a Telecaster during that period, but in around about 1971, he switched to a Gibson. So that again changed the guitar dynamic and sound, which is what you hear on Power Driver, Hello, and Quo. Now, with On the Level, he's now turned on to the Telecaster. But aside from that, another turning point that occurred was that Quo discovered a thing called an open G tuning. Now, I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of the Quo guitar players out there. They know exactly what that is, because it features quite a lot in Quo's material. But it particularly features on this album. In as much as I would say that every song, bar the final song, is played in, there's an open G guitar in there somewhere. That is what's giving it that jangly, cleaner sound that you speak of. That's why it's got On the Level has got this particular sound, because it's the guitar tuning album. Now it's an open G tuning, yes, some are in B, so they got the capo, they put the capo on, changed the key and everything. But we'll go into it when we go through each individual song, but the overall sound, why it's got this particular vibe and sound, is because of that guitar tuning. And whether you've got Rick playing it or you've got Francis playing it, say like on Down Down, it gives it that particular stringy sound that's so glorious on this album.
I'm not sure that I was aware that all of the tracks had that G tuning. So, firstly, before we go into a track by track analysis, let's talk about the album cover, which features the band in what is known as, excuse the pronunciation, but an Ames room, I believe, is the thing. Mick's holding it up there, the original sleeve. And we've essentially got Alan Lancaster on the front cover looking big, two others looking smaller, and then Francis Rossi in the middle, and the back features Rick there. What are your thoughts on this album cover? I mean, it's another one with the band, which kind of follows on from Pile Driver and Hello and Quo, like very band-centric covers, but this time it's the band, rather than a piece of artwork.
Yeah, and it's it really is a brilliant album cover, because the bands of that time, the classic 70s bands, they've all had such classic album covers with all the other bands. This was just as contemporary as whatever Led Zeppelin were putting out, and that was very striking and interesting. And the title itself, On the Level, of course I didn't realise it at the time, but Francis, sort of after 1974, he in interviews, when he was talking about the Quo album, he always was referring to it as being unbalanced. And he felt that Rick and Alan had dominated the previous album, which is a fair point. They really did. It's particularly Alan. His presence was very, very sort of known on that album. So I think perhaps with the album title On the Level, Francis felt that with this album that they'd got the balance back. You could say, well, yes, representation of all the band members and flavours of their different writing styles. Rossi influence than there was on the previous album. So yeah, that's probably why it was called On the Level. The thing about being gatefold is that we had all these fantastic pictures on the all from like being on tour. There's some there, obviously Disneyland when they were on tour in America. Just snapshots of them being on the road, and for a fan, it was a really great insight into what goes on, and how interesting it must be to be in a band, and what fun they must have had. And it's like, I remember feeling, I'd love to be in that band. That was, even though I was 13, it was like, oh yeah, if there was ever a band I wanted to be in, it would be this one. So yeah, great album cover, great concept.
So what we're going to do now is go through the album song by song. This album has one thing in particular in common with the Quo album, in that it starts with a song that goes into another song. In the previous album, Quo did Backwater into Just Take Me. In this one, Little Lady into Most of the Time. Mick, tell us your thoughts on Little Lady.
Again, it's the opening song, and the intro is just incredible. It's so immediate, and it catches you out in a way on very very first listen. You know, when you've got it on your turntable, you don't know what to expect, and you've got this da 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 da. You know, you're like wow, and then there's this slight pause, and then the track takes off. You're into familiar territory. That you're into the Quo rhythm, but it's really up tempo. There's a lot of energy, and what I find with Little Lady, and what I found then, was the incredible amount of energy that it had, and also it was slightly what would you say? It's sort of unusual. It's not like a regular 12-bar song. It's quite sort of, there's kind of like a little progressive kind of thing going on in it, and Rick's doing the lead vocal, so it's not a Francis vocal. So what you've got is you've got something different again, from, you know, like from the previous album we had Backwater, like you say, which was more of a sort of build-up song, whereas Little Lady is just full on rock and roll, and lots of energy, and very interesting with its different sections. You know, dropping down in the middle to the quiet bit, and then building back up again, which is, of course, was a Quo trick that they did on a lot of things, but very effective nevertheless. And this is just a great opening song, very fresh. It still sounds fresh now when you listen to it. Really great.
Well, it became something of a live favourite later on, and usually without. I mean, the next song most of the time they used to be together, and then they got split apart, and then they were kind of back together again. Do you think they kind of work separately, or do they work as one complete track?
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? It's where you're so used to hearing something in a certain way, like you know, when Little Lady ends, and now like a rolling stone, you know, the ending, and it rings off, and you're expecting the walking along, even if that's what's not going to happen. That's what you're expecting to hear, just as at the end of Backwater, you're expecting those great drums to bring you into Just Take Me. They do work on their own. They can be done on their own, but it's a strange thing where you get songs paired up together. It just kind of works. And again, with the open tuning thing that I was speaking about earlier, both of these songs have got the open G tuning, but they're in B, so they've got the capo fourth fret up. So you've got that open G tuning thing going on as well. And the dynamic of the change, where it goes into the strummy quieter, where we lead into most of the time, it just works. It's a really great dynamic, a great sing along, and then it goes into that really heavy 12-bar blues, you know, outro with the guitar solo, very similar to what they did on Railroad on Dog with Two Head. That same kind of idea. But it's quite an explosive solo by Francis, and I have to say that he's really on fire on this album as the album progresses. That solo he's not holding back. I mean, when it really kicks in, and every string bend, and you can really feel it, you know, like he really means it, and it's just, again, it's really glorious and completely different to Little Lady, of course, and it just works. Those two songs together really work. I was sort of reminded from when it used to be in the set back in the mid-70s, when on the reunion tours, one of the great highlights of those reunion gigs was when they did Most of the Time, and you had everybody singing along, and Francis then backing off the microphone and allowing us all to sing. You know, the Hammersmith Choir. You know, you can hear it on the recordings, but when you're actually there, it was a really emotional thing. The atmosphere and everything. It was that total Quo magic with everybody singing along. So yeah.
Yeah, it was really loud as well. I remember I was there in 2013, and yeah, that was the loudest crowd that I've ever experienced. Knew every word completely with them, and most of the time, as you say, was a highlight. Let's move on to what is my favourite track on the album, I Saw the Light, which is a Rossi Young composition. And while it kind of sounds quite basic at first, it's quite difficult to play. It's a track that you do in your set sometimes with Quo Connection. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it's I Saw the Light is a superb track, and the Rossi Young songwriting combination really comes into its own on this album, and this is one example of how Francis and Bob, they just knew, they just had that ingredient X to come up with these wonderful songs and melodies and lyrics. And I Saw the Light is a great example of that. And yes, we do it in Quo Connection, and it always goes down very well. Now, Quo did have it in their live set in 1975, quite briefly. Only that year, I think. Did it go into? Yeah, I think it was, and it never really worked. I think for them, I think they can hear it on a couple of bootlegs, but for whatever reason, they didn't stick with it, and which is a bit of a shame because it is such a great song. It's so much. It's great to play as well. It's just got something about it, that great chorus, which I would have to say that I've often wondered if it could have been like a possible follow-up single to Down Down, with that really strong hook that it's got on the chorus. I don't know what you think of that. Do you think that?
I think there was possibility for that to be a single because, like you say, it's got that catchy chorus there. The narrative is really good, the melody line, and of course it comes in with a bang, and it's sort of Quo's thing of it doesn't initially sound like Status Quo, and then it hits you, and it's got a big solo in it, and yeah, there's just some really nice stuff in there. I think it could have been a follow-up single, and
Yeah,
the fact that they had a number one single and then didn't really
yeah.
follow it up.
But yeah, on the chorus, I guess if they'd been a bit bolder with the backing vocals on the chorus and made the chorus a bit bigger in terms of sound, I'm talking about, like vocal harmonies and everything, and then it probably would have had a commercial appeal, but they weren't very keen on releasing more than one song from an album at that point. So whether that was ever a consideration, I don't know, but it's certainly a favourite song of mine. And as I say, that the Rossi Young songwriting team, that this is another fine example of that team work. Some of the great songs that they came up with. definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and this song was later recorded by Bob Young on his album In Quo Country in the mid '80s in a completely different arrangement, and yet it still works. And that's the mark of a good song.
Yeah,
The other thing as well is in the intro, it has the same thing as Little Lady. It's those double lead lines with Alan's bass as well, and yeah, it goes into that kind of shuffly thing. It's like you said, it's one of my favorite tracks on the album, one which I revisit quite a lot and have heard tribute bands do it, and it sounds really good in a live environment. So it is kind of puzzling why the band didn't go on with it, but it was probably a little bit more intricate, perhaps, because there's sort of moments where it kind of fades off and then comes back in again, and in a live setting, maybe that didn't work quite so well. The next track is Over and Done, which is a slightly different vibe, but still with that, as you've said previously, jangling guitar sound. It was written by Alan Lancaster with lead vocals by Francis Rossi. This track epitomizes the sound of the album for me, and I think it also says about the album how in previous ones it kind of feels like they go off in different tangents. In this one, there's a lot more structure, and so with this, they've got sort of an intro, and then we go straight into the verses. What do you think of Over and Done?
well, Over and Done is again. It's obviously there's a lot of guitar tuning on this, and just giving it that really great sound, guitar sound. That it's got that jangly, stringy vibe to it. And curiously, it's one of Alan's songs. So, and as you pointed out, Francis is doing the lead vocal on it, and bearing in mind that there was a kind of with these albums, there was a sort of a format that developed where particular songwriters, individual songwriters, whatever it was that they brought to the table, it was likely that they were going to do a lead vocal on the songs that they'd contributed to the band. And it's interesting that Francis has been given the job of doing the lead vocal on this song. Band politics and things, it's obviously not an issue here, because whether it was a case of they tried it and Alan said, "Oh, Francis, it's not working. You have a go at doing it," and Francis did the vocal on it, and it sounded better. It suited the track, and I have to say, I can't imagine this song being sung by any other band member myself. So I find that interesting. Whatever the background story is about Over and Done, it is a great track. And I'll tell you how great it is. I remember that summer of '75, we went to Scotland for summer holidays, and Mum and I, we stayed with my grandparents, her parents, and this was in the suitcase. On the level was in the suitcase, and I was still in that period of playing it round the clock at every available opportunity. So it would be on the radiogram at my grand's house. And my granddad, who was 64, he had to endure this, okay? But he liked Over and Done. I mean, his kind of music, his pop music, was the music of the 30s and the 1940s. But he particularly liked Over and Done. He always made a point of saying, "I like that one." So, yeah, had it maybe had a bit more exposure, I don't know if it had been a bit more well known. I don't know. But one thing I will say about the whole guitar tuning thing, I don't know if they did it on the same afternoon that they did Down Down. But if you actually listen to the intro, there are elements of the intro to Down Down, which I have picked up on. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of the song. But it's a very similar approach.
Yeah, now you say it, it is, isn't it? It's got a similar kind of vibe about it.
Mm.
Yeah, I wonder, to go back to your granddad enjoying it. Maybe it's the melody, perhaps the fact that with these songs, you know, they do sort of. I've met people before who've gone, oh, it's just like thrashy, bashy stuff, and it's like, well, actually, there is always a melody under there. There's always a song there, you know, and with something like Over and Done or I Saw the Light, you know, on this album, there are a lot of those. Where underneath everything, there is a melody at the heart of it. Let's go on to track number 5, which was the B-side of Down Down, Night Ride, which is perhaps a little bit more of a what you might later refer to as Quo by numbers. That's just kind of my opinion on it. It was written by Rick Parfitt and Bob Young. But it's just a feel-good song, perfect song for the B-side of Down Down.
Yeah, of course, having got Down Down as a single before On the Level came out, I was already familiar with this track. Mm-hmm. So it was like, oh, Night Ride's on there, you know. So I knew what to expect. Night Ride, it doesn't get mentioned very often, and I guess it's kind of, I don't know if it's slightly quirky or what it is, but I actually really enjoy it. I like it because, again, it's a different approach, and I have always thought of this as Quo trying to be the Rolling Stones.
Right, okay.
Whether that was a conscious thing on their part or not, they didn't realise it, but it comes across to me as very Stones-like. I can almost hear them doing it in a bit more of a raggedy style, perhaps. And I can in my head I can hear Jagger singing those lyrics and that chorus. And but I like it. I really do like it. It has got something. And again, it's different from what we've heard up until this point, but it doesn't get mentioned very often.
No, I mean, in that case, I'm going to retract my statement of Quo by numbers, because I'd never made that Rolling Stones comparison before.
Right.
And I guess as well, it almost has sort of they were doing America around this point. Yeah. And so it sort of has that American edge to it. There's something in the vibe there that's sort of American. So I wonder whether, like you say, all these influences kind of making a difference on this track.
Well, they probably. I mean, bearing in mind that Quo's music is much maligned by critics for all sounding the same and all this. Yeah, well, I don't need to go into all of that, but you know the criticisms, and they were probably looking at other inspirations and things to try and maybe get a slightly different angle on certain things. And I mean, I'd love to know what inspired it, and but again, it's got that open G tuning on it, and which gives it that particular sound. And but it's great. I love the atmosphere of it, and that's one thing I will say about the entire album. The album itself has got this atmosphere about it. Because another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that this album, it plays like a gig.
Right.
It takes you on all of these sort of, ups and downs. There's certain contours to it, like the ebb and flow of a gig. You've got the strong opening song, and of course, and then finishing with Bye Bye Johnny. It sort of does play like a gig, but it's got this particular atmosphere about it where it just you can feel the unified spirit within the band, and it's like even within like songs, you get the occasional somebody shouting out or something. There's something going on. It's got this wonderful atmosphere about the whole album, and this sort of unification where they're on the ascendancy and they're all in it together. They're all striving for the same thing, and but they're all enjoying it. This is how it comes across to me.
Well, now you say that on Night Ride, when you get to the "You Move Me,"
Mm,
on the words "Move Me," you hear secondary backing vocals
yeah,
that aren't pitch perfect. They do feel, as you say, like a party or
yeah,
like a more elevated atmosphere.
yeah. It's got that wonderful spirit where you can imagine them, you can picture them in your mind, them all round the mic when they're recording it, um, and they're just really going for it, and maybe they've had a couple of beers or whatever, and it just that's how it strikes me as a band that are really having fun. There's a real sort of unity there, which permeates the entire album. That's how I receive it.
Well, let's move on to the next track, which is the following side, I think, isn't it? Down, Down.
Yeah,
The track that was released as a single, performed on Top of the Pops and all over the place. There's probably more video of this song than any other, but don't quote me on that. It's certainly one that gets played an awful lot. And one of the first times that I saw a video of the band in this period performing this song. So, Down Down, does it still stand up as a track after 50 years?
absolutely. It's the Quo number one. It's got everything in it. It's got the classic intro. It's just strong, and it's also unusual. A bit like Little Lady, in that it's not a straight 12 bar. You
Right.
couldn't say it was a straight 12 bar song. It's got a sort of, I don't know how you would describe it. It's sort of progressive. It's not like Caroline or playing that sort of 3 chord trick thing. It's very riff orientated. It's very, the chord changes are not, um, as I said, like in Caroline or playing. And it's got that, in the chorus, down, down, deeper, down, the da da da, the da da da,
Mm-hmm.
all these things going on, which makes it what it is. I mean, that intro is just superb. It lures you in again, which is quite unusual. I don't know if weird is the word. It's like when I remember first hearing it, I wondered what was going on. And again, it's not until it rings off and then it starts going, the build
Yeah.
into the band kicking in. But once you've heard it for the first time, and of course, when we did get it, uh, you're playing it over and over, and because it was the follow up to Break the Rules, wasn't it? So it was completely completely different to Break the Rules. And Top of the Pops, you mentioned Top of the Pops. Funnily enough, the band were on tour in France when it hit number one.
Yeah.
So they had gigs. They were playing gigs. So they didn't do the whole appearing on Top of the Pops thing. I think it was Pan's people that were dancing to it instead.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of a shame, considering, you know, how many Top of the Pops appearances that they had throughout their career. And the one time that they were at number one, they'd hit number one. They weren't available.
I might be thinking of Supersonic, which I think they
Yeah.
also appeared on at the same time.
Well, the Mike Mansfield thing, yes, that was later, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because nobody really, the whole video thing was not. It was very much in its infancy, and it sort of cost a lot of money to do. So a lot of bands didn't really bother with it. It was only bands that were really had a big budget that could indulge themselves in such things. So anyway, down. It's Quo perfection, really. We do it at the end of the Quo Connection set. It's one of the encores, and the place there it just goes bananas. People just go bananas for it, and so it has got this enduring quality. But what I will also say about the single is of course an edit. Where I'm 13 and I'm turning the record over to play side two, I know Down Down. I know it inside out. So I've heard it so many times by this point, but you put it on, you play it, it's got no surprises for you until we get to the end.
Yeah.
And what a surprise that was. What a brilliant fade out. It goes into this extended jam session at the end.
Which kind of peters out and yet still keeps going.
Yeah. Which you're then one. I mean, I did that thing. I'm sure a lot of Quo fans did it. I know they did, right? Where you have these, because Quo were brilliant with their fade outs, where it's fading down and it's still going, but you want more, and so you're up there on your record player and you're cranking the volume to try and squeeze just that extra bit more out of it, like the end bit in a toothpaste tube. You're trying to.
Yeah.
And I did that with, we've all done that with 4,500 times, all those tracks where they're still going on and it's faded down and you're going, no, I want more. So there's always there is kind of that thing where we're on the master tapes. There will be whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Whatever happens. I mean, whether the song actually just collapsed at that point, which is highly likely, where somebody just said, right, that's enough. I'll tell you one thing, here's a little thing. It was a nightmare to dance to because at the school discos and the like, youth club discos and things in 1975, you'd ask a girl to dance. This is in the days before air guitar playing and everything was. I mean, people did do air guitar playing, but only in the privacy of their own homes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really. It wasn't a thing. I mean, everybody did that thing with the thumbs there and doing the shoulder thing, but. So you would kind of try and maybe do that, but you would ask a girl to dance with you, and with all those stops and starts in it, it was an absolute nightmare to dance to. And then the poor girl, whoever it was that you were dancing with, she would be like, she was obviously flattered that she'd been asked by a boy to dance, but you could see that they were not enjoying it, So just a little insight into my teenage years there. I'm sure I'm not alone.
So let's go on now to an Alan Lancaster composition once again. Broken Man.
Yeah,
Very different vibe
yeah,
to the rest of the album, but still, as you say, that G tuning, that kind of jangliness to it fits it quite well. And
yeah,
a lot of really interesting solo stuff in here too.
yeah. This is classic Alan. There's a lot going on in there, and he hasn't gone for the obvious 12 bar thing. He was good at coming up with these sort of slightly different approaches. Still a lot of melody and lyrically very interesting. Another fine guitar solo from Francis. Again, a change of pace, different flavour, but still, a really good song. And again, I like it. It's one of my favourite Alan songs for not being predictable and what you would fully expect, really. And a lot going on in it in terms of sounds and things going on, and a great guitar solo from Francis.
And a slightly softer vocal from Alan too.
Yeah, he was capable of holding back a bit, and which I think was a good thing, uh, as demonstrated here. And it's got a kind of a nice sort of swing to it as well. The change of pace in amongst all the rockers and everything is particularly after Down Down, and it's a bit like how do you follow Down Down? It was a change of pace, and it's a bit like I think we broached upon this on about the Quo album. They have the track listing Man where Take Me, which were pretty full on to change the vibe. So maybe a similar now do Down Down, but to actually follow it up with a different vibe.
Yeah, I got some of that. It froze again, but
Ugh.
never mind. So let's move on to What to Do, which we lost, we found in a way. This is, again, one of my favorite tracks on the album. I love that kind of bit at the beginning. It's a Rossi Young composition, that's got sort of a country flavor to it
Mm.
as well, and it just really kicks for me. What do you think of What to Do?
Well, this again is Francis and Bob at their absolute best. Like I Saw the Light, this song, I mean, the way that it leads in with the studio chat. Again, this falls in with the whole atmosphere of the album, of this kind of togetherness and the false start, and then into the song properly. Some of Francis Rossi's finest moments are in this song. Lyrically, his vocal, his guitar playing, the composition. This song has it all of what you would say classic Rossi Young song. Again, I don't know what the possibilities might have been as a follow-up single to Down Down. Another catchy chorus, very strong, very strong, and just a superb track, really.
Well, the intro sort of solo always sounds like he's going to fall apart at any minute, and it never.
Mm.
It just goes straight into the verses.
But from a musician point of view, it's like how did he come up with these moves? Because they're not usual, and yet Francis, he's so underrated. And on this album, I think on this album, this is him at his best, with what he's really capable of doing. And it's demonstrated very well on this particular song. The ear for melody and dynamics within the solo itself, all those moves that he does in there, again, just really superb.
One thing I will point out for What to Do is John's drumming is solid. And I kind of love the almost in between kind of each shuffly moment, there's sort of a clicky thing going on. And it's kind of the same on I Saw the Light. There's sort of a certain rhythmic thing happening, and it's so dialed in and something that perhaps isn't always shone a light on. And certainly we said with Quo that was almost John's album because there's so much great drumming. It continues into here because with What to Do, that solid rhythm that allows them room to play.
Yes, well, again, it's this particular swing that the song has got, and I'm sure that Francis has even highlighted this, where it's got this feel, this particular feel, and that's unique, almost unique to Quo. And there may be a reason for that. And you talk about John's drum sound on this album is excellent.
Yeah.
And which is also what makes it. But the trick with John is John's got a particular feel because of one thing. And that is that he's actually left-handed, but he plays a right-handed kit, which is wrong. Okay? This is why nobody can really capture exactly what it is that John used to do. Because I'm not a drummer, but it's that thing where you've got your strength. If you're right-handed, your strength is in your right hand, your right arm. Okay, so this would be if you're playing drums right-handed, would be the hi-hat here. So it'd be like this, you'd be, and on the cymbals, and so you got the. But what John's got is the opposite. So he's got the strength in his left arm, which is his snare beats. So it's reversed, and we have chatted. It's a mistake. John didn't realise that you could get such a thing as a left-handed kit, or set your drums up to be left-handed. So he just persevered with it, and that's why he's got this particular feel. And when you watch the "Doing Your Thing, Gotta Go Home" from 1970, that TV on the Granada TV special, where they're doing like a 20-minute version of "Gotta Go Home," and John's doing the double-handed shuffle. He's just doing this solid for about, I don't know, 15 minutes, and it's quite incredible. I mean, I've shown that to drummers, and they've looked at that and they go, I couldn't do that. Not for that length of time, and be that consistent and keep it going. But of course, it's because John's he's got his strength here, you see, on those snare beats. A drummer who really knows about playing drums will probably explain it better. But that I do know. And that's why John's got this particular feel.
Well, it's very interesting. That's not something I've considered before, that the left-handedness would make a difference to the kind of feel there. And it's something that is prominent on this album, I think. But
Yes.
we've now gone from talking about John's drumming and that big sound that is on the level to Light and Shade with Where I Am, which is completely different. This almost could have been on Pile Driver. There's sort of a little bit of a throwback to a previous thing. It was written by Rick Parfitt, who also did lead vocals on it as well. And it's one of those lush, kind of beautiful songs that he wrote so often.
Yeah. Again, a change of pace. you know, when you sat there and you're going through it and you're looking at where I am. Oh, it's a Rick Parfitt song. You think because you've been blown away with Little Lady, you're expecting, you know, something else to come out the blocks. Of course, couldn't be further from the truth. But Rick, it's always Rick who seems to. He has this more sensitive, romantic side to him. I mean, he's obviously the rocker, and he's very comfortable with that whole rocker image. But it was always seemed to be down to him to come up with something a bit more sensitive, and this again, a bit like Night Ride. This is a very, very sort of overlooked song, and I would have liked to have seen them attempt it when they did that whole acoustic thing. Because it's you know, it's got a very gentle vocal. It's very, you know, very laid back. Again, it's a great little changing dynamic from what we've had so far, and yeah, it's a great breather.
Is that a 12-string guitar in the solo section?
It could well be.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit different to usual.
They've definitely sort of done something, whether they've tracked it or whatever, to give it that particular sound. But again, there's a lot of things going on in there where they're trying these different particular sounds and things. I mean, that solo, do 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 do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like an expected sort of normal guitar part. What have they done that on? They've done that on. Have they done it on the bass?
I think there is a secondary. There is a bass there. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're trying these different sounds and approaches. So there is actually a lot going on in this song, and it's quite interesting, and it's a great changing pace for what's to follow.
Yeah, the Chuck Berry cover, "Bye Bye Johnny," featuring Fearful Fingers, or is it Fearless Fingers? It's yeah.
I imagine they were, because well, just before we go into that, another album. I'm just going to slightly change when we're talking about Bye Bye Johnny. Now, I personally, I hadn't seen Quo live by this point. I didn't see them until the following year. I think I was aware that they did Bye Bye Johnny, but I don't think I'd ever heard them doing it. Or had I heard them doing it on a radio thing? I can't remember. But anyway, another album that used to be one of my air guitar favourites was this one.
Mud Rock. Yeah.
And the final track on here is Bye Bye Johnny. But it's like a mid-tempo thing, which, if I'm being quite honest, it's quite boring. Okay. The rest of the album's great because it's flat out mud. It's 12-bar blues all the way. It's that's you know, it's certainly was its appeal for me. So Bye Bye Johnny. So again, we've got this studio chat intro leading into it. Again, going with the whole great atmosphere of the album thing, and off it goes. When you say frantic, okay,
yeah,
this is frantic. This, I know it's a studio recording of Bye Bye Johnny, but for me, this is Quo at their most frantic on record in terms of studio.
Yeah.
It is absolutely hysterical. It's the level of intensity and it's just flat out. It just blows. It just blows everything else out the window. It's so full on, and I'm trying to think of what the reason being for that would be. Why it is so hectic is that this was the song that they finished their live set with, so it was well oiled.
Yeah.
And unlike all the other songs that are on the album, of course, they were created for On the Level. They were created for the album. So they were put together in the studio, as you said earlier, about this being quite measured and, everything being just so. But when you get to Bye Bye Johnny, it's just mental. And even listening to it is exhausting. Because of the level of intensity and energy. But they've been playing it for years. So it wasn't a studio construct. It was a case of, we'll do Bye Bye Johnny now. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Off they went.
Yeah.
So they literally probably just bashed that backing track down. The vocal, I really like Alan's vocal on this. It's a bit more, it's not as, what's the word? Gravelly as it is on the live album, where it's, he's got that definite growl to his vocal on the live album.
Yeah.
But on here, it's slightly lighter, a slightly straighter vocal, which is great. And the playing is off the scale in terms of, as I say, with the energy and everything. And the Francis Rossi guitar solos, they're just hanging on by their fingernails. He is absolutely on fire. It's really wild, actually. Yeah, what a way to end the album. It's just totally stunning. And even in the drop down bit where it goes quieter, the little noodling that's going on, where it's going to be the sing song bit when they do it live. All the little noodling, guitar noodling that's going on in the background, and the feedback, and you can just tell that everything has been cranked up.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Well, that seems like a great word to end this on. In fact, no, let's, I'm going to ask you here, one word to describe the album in total.
In total?
Yeah.
Glorious.
Glorious. I think that's a great place to end.
But we've forgotten something, Jamie.
Right. Okay.
On the end, there's the "You'll Never Walk Alone" thing.
There is. I always forget where that is. Yeah.
Which was a thing. I don't think it happens now at Quo gigs, or hasn't. But it was definitely a 70s thing. That would be it. The band would go off, and the fans would sing that. We'd all sat, be yelling that, and I'm guessing, because it's obviously live, it is from an actual gig. I'm wondering if that is from the recordings of the live EP.
Right.
If it's from one of those gigs. Maybe we need to get Andy Gamble to have a look into that. He might be able to help us with that one.
Maybe so. Yeah, like you said, On the Level, glorious. Great album.